A wild horse had been lying on the ground for a day and refused to get up or eat. When Ranger Francis was finally called, he immediately rushed to the scene. As he stood in front of the horse, looking at it intently, he knew something serious was going on. He wasted no time and called a vet. But when the vet arrived, they made a discovery that neither of them had anticipated. Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. Ranger Francis knew he had to hurry as soon as he got a call about a piece of land he protected. The farmer calling him had seen a wild horse lying on the ground and had kept an eye on it the whole day. The horse hadn't moved a muscle and hadn't gotten up to eat or drink. This was very concerning. Once Ranger Francis arrived at the farmer's house, it was still a little drive to the horse. Farmer Frank waited for him on his tractor, ready to drive the final miles. As they drove on Farmer Frank's tractor, he told Francis about the horse. He had spotted it early this morning and figured it was just resting, but now he feared something else could be going on. Ranger Francis understood his fear. Wild horses were protected animals in that area, and he was the one responsible for their safety. "Are we almost there?" he asked Farmer Frank worriedly. He didn't want to get to the horse too late. Luckily, soon after, he could see the horse lying in the field in the distance. There it is. Sergei Sosnitsky. Instantly, Ranger Francis's stomach dropped. This didn't look good at all. The horse was on the ground, breathing heavily. It was lying still, not even trying to get up. "Is it in the same exact position as this morning?" Francis asked. The farmer nodded his head in silence. "Ranger." Francis sighed as he looked at the horse intently. This was no job for him alone. "I'm calling a vet," he suddenly said. It startled the farmer, who had no clue this situation was that serious. "Is that really necessary?" Farmer Frank asked in disbelief. Ranger Francis confidently nodded his head. "There's something about this situation that just doesn't sit right with me. I need to ask someone more specialized in this type of thing." Luckily, Ranger Francis knew someone who worked as a veterinarian, so he could arrange for him to come as soon as possible. This was a very time-sensitive matter, so they needed to work as quickly as they could. Not long after, Veterinarian Theo stood beside Ranger Francis, looking at the horse with the same worried look on his face. "And it's been here all day?" he asked the farmer. He shook his head in disbelief. "It's a good thing you called me Francis." Theo began to walk around the horse to see if there were any visible injuries, but there weren't any. This was truly puzzling. Why wouldn't a horse just get up from the ground? He crouched down to look at the horse more closely. As there were no visible injuries from the outside, Veterinarian Theo told the men he had to perform an ultrasound. It wouldn't be possible to transfer the horse to his clinic, so the ultrasound had to be done then and there. Ranger Francis's heart raced in his chest. Wild horses weren't used to humans. Who knew how it would react to this? And Ranger Francis's worry was proven to be right. As veterinarian, Theo grabbed a portable ultrasound machine out of his truck and walked over to the horse with it in his hands. The horse began to move and make distressing sounds. It was trying to get up and run away, but it simply couldn't. It truly was a heartbreaking sight. "What do we do now if we can't even get close enough to the horse?" Farmer Frank asked worriedly. Francis and Theo looked at each other. The wild horse was in clear distress, which wasn't good for his already weakened state. They didn't want to cause more harm than was already done to the horse, so there was only one other option left. They had to sedate the horse. It wasn't something they liked to do, but otherwise, the vet would never be able to do the ultrasound. Veterinarian. Theo quickly walked back to his truck and got out a little briefcase. Out of the briefcase, Theo grabbed a very long needle filled with the sedation. Farmer Frank paled at the sight of the needle. "I can't look at this." "All right, Francis, I'm going to need your help with this," Theo said. He asked Frank to walk parallel to him to distract the horse. If the horse was focused on Francis instead of Theo, then he could easily insert the needle. Francis did exactly what the veterinarian asked, and to his surprise, it worked. Soon after, they watched the horse's body completely relax. Ranger Francis watched with anticipation as Theo shaved the horse's belly. He had to do that for the ultrasound to be as accurate as possible. None of the men had any idea where an injury would be, if there even were any, so he shaved off a very big part. Veterinarian Theo then put some gel on the shaven area and got to work. He glided the ultrasound machine slowly over the horse's belly, looking at the screen intently. Sometimes he even went over the same spot twice to really make sure he didn't miss anything. The longer Veterinarian Theo worked without luck, the more hope Ranger Francis was losing. What on earth was going on with this horse? He really hoped they would be able to save it. As Theo methodically scanned the horse's belly, the ultrasound monitor flickered with an unusual image. A shape, unclear and unexpected, appeared on the screen. Theo's brow furrowed in concentration, while Francis leaned in closer, both puzzled. "What is that?" Francis whispered, his voice tinged with concern. Theo, usually calm and collected, couldn't hide his surprise. This was unlike anything he'd seen before in his years of veterinary practice. Theo adjusted the ultrasound probe, trying to get a clearer view of the mysterious shape. His hands moved with practiced precision, but his eyes betrayed a growing worry. "I need to see this better," he muttered, almost to himself. Francis watched intently, feeling a mix of anxiety and curiosity. The horse lay still, oblivious to the men's growing concern. Every adjustment of the equipment deepened the mystery, the shape remaining an enigma. The shape on the screen remained elusive, and Theo double-checked the settings of the ultrasound machine. "This doesn't make sense," he mumbled, running his hand through his hair. Francis stood beside him, his face mirroring Theo's confusion. "Could it be an injury or something else?" he asked, his voice laced with worry. Theo shook his head, unable to provide a definitive answer. The uncertainty hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. Francis and Theo stepped away from the horse, discussing the possibilities. "Could it be a tumor or maybe an abscess?" Francis suggested, trying to piece together the puzzle. Theo pondered, his expression thoughtful. "It's not typical of any condition I've seen in horses," he replied. Their theories varied, from the plausible to the far-fetched, but nothing seemed to fit perfectly with the strange image they had witnessed. Theo finally paused, taking a deep breath. "We need more expertise on this," he said decisively. He reached for his phone, ready to call a colleague who specialized in large animal surgery. Francis nodded in agreement, realizing the seriousness of the situation. They both understood that this was beyond their current capabilities. As Theo dialed the number, the weight of the decision set in. They were stepping into uncharted territory. Theo's fingers moved swiftly over his phone, dialing the number of a renowned large animal surgeon. As he explained the situation, his voice was steady but tinged with urgency. "We've found something unusual," he spoke into the phone, describing the perplexing image on the ultrasound. Francis listened intently, his gaze fixed on the horse. Theo's conversation was detailed yet concise, ensuring the specialist understood the gravity of the situation. After the call, Theo and Francis found themselves in a tense wait. They watched the horse, its breathing steady but laboured. What could it be? Francis pondered aloud, his eyes never leaving the horse. Theo, usually a beacon of assurance, could only offer a shrug. His usual confidence was replaced with a pensive frown. The minutes ticked by slowly, each one heavy with worry and anticipation. Knowing the specialist would soon arrive, Theo and Francis began preparing the area. They cleared a space around the horse, ensuring easy access for examination. "Let's make everything as ready as we can," Theo instructed. Francis nodded, moving with purpose. Together, they organized the necessary tools and equipment, creating an impromptu outdoor clinic. Their movements were efficient, a silent agreement of the seriousness of the horse's condition. The crunch of gravel announced the arrival of the specialist. A car pulled up and a figure stepped out, carrying a bag of instruments. Theo and Francis approached, greeting the newcomer. The specialist, a figure of authority and experience, surveyed the scene with a professional eye. Introductions were brief. The urgency of the situation left little room for pleasantries. The air was thick with anticipation as the specialist approached the horse. The specialist wasted no time, immediately examining the horse. With a practiced hand, they palpated the horse's abdomen, their expression focused and analytical. "This is certainly unusual," they murmured, echoing Theo's earlier concerns. Theo and Francis stood by, watching every move. The specialist's initial assessment was cautious, yet their expertise brought a new depth to the investigation. "We may need more than just an ultrasound," they suggested, hinting at the complexity of the case. After a thorough examination, the specialist straightened up, a serious look on their face. "We need to transport this horse to the hospital for further tests," they declared. Theo and Francis exchanged a glance, understanding the gravity of this suggestion. Transporting a wild horse, especially in this condition, was no small feat. The specialist's recommendation underscored the severity of the situation, adding a new layer of urgency to their task. Gathered around the resting horse, the trio weighed their options. Moving it could be risky, Theo voiced his concern, knowing the horse's weakened state. "But staying here might be worse," the specialist added. Francis listened intently, aware of the difficult decision ahead. They considered various strategies, discussing the safest and most efficient way to transport the horse. Every decision carried weight, balancing the risk against the urgent need for advanced care. Recognizing the need for additional help, Francis took out his phone to call local volunteers. "We need all the hands we can get," he said determinedly. The community's response was immediate and supportive. People from nearby areas, familiar with Francis and his dedication to wildlife, agreed to help. Their readiness to assist in this unusual situation spoke volumes of their respect for both Francis and the natural world they shared. With the community's help, a plan to transport the horse began to take shape. Theo and the specialist discussed the best way to move the animal without causing further distress. A large trailer was arranged, along with the necessary equipment to facilitate a smooth transfer. Francis coordinated with the volunteers, assigning tasks and preparing for the journey ahead. Every detail was meticulously planned, ensuring the horse's safety and comfort during transport. The time had come to put their plan into action. The horse, sedated for its comfort and safety, was carefully moved onto a specially prepared trailer. Volunteers worked in unison, guided by Theo and the specialist's instructions. Francis supervised the operation, ensuring every step was carried out with precision. As the trailer began its cautious journey to the hospital, a collective sense of hope and apprehension filled the air. As the sun began its descent, a group of volunteers gathered, united by a common cause. They arrived with equipment and a readiness to help. Francis coordinated the efforts, directing people with a calm authority. The sense of community was palpable, each person eager to contribute to the horse's rescue. The collective effort was a testament to the bond between the locals and their natural surroundings, a shared responsibility for the welfare of wildlife. With utmost care, the horse was guided onto the vehicle. The process was slow, each movement calculated to ensure the animal's comfort. Volunteers formed a human barrier, providing support and a calming presence. The horse, although sedated, seemed to sense the care being offered. Theo and the specialist watched closely, ready to intervene if needed. The success of this stage was crucial, a gentle journey for a creature in distress. The convoy set off towards the hospital, a line of vehicles with the trailer carrying the horse at its heart. Francis and the specialist led the way, their vehicle's lights cutting through the growing dusk. The journey was tense but steady, with every driver aware of the precious cargo they escorted. Theo followed closely, his eyes frequently checking the rearview mirror. The road to recovery had begun, each mile bringing hope. As they reached the veterinary hospital, the atmosphere was a mix of relief and anticipation. A team of hospital staff awaited them, ready to provide immediate care. The horse was gently unloaded and professionals swarmed around, each playing a critical role. Francis watched, his heart heavy with worry, yet hopeful. The hospital's bright lights shone like a beacon, promising advanced care and a chance for healing. Inside the hospital, preparations for surgery commenced with swift efficiency. The horse was moved to an operating room, large enough to accommodate its size. Medical staff bustled around, setting up equipment and sterilizing instruments. The specialist conferred with the surgical team, outlining the plan. Theo and Francis stood by, their roles as caretakers momentarily paused, entrusting the horse's fate to skilled hands. The tension was palpable, each moment critical. In the operating room, a hush fell over the team as they began the surgery. The room was filled with a sense of purpose and precision. Surgeons, clad in scrubs, worked in unison, their movements meticulous and coordinated. The specialist oversaw the procedure, guiding the team through each step. Francis and Theo watched from the observation area, their faces a mix of worry and hope. The delicate operation was a race against time, every second crucial. Midway through the procedure, the lead surgeon's hand paused, drawing the team's attention to a spot on the screen. "There's something here," he announced, his voice tinged with surprise. A foreign object, unexpected and out of place, appeared embedded in the horse's abdomen. The discovery brought a new urgency to the operation. Francis and Theo exchanged a look of disbelief. What they had feared was now a startling reality. With utmost care, the surgical team worked to remove the foreign object. The room was silent, save for the beeping of monitors and the surgeon's steady instructions. The object was extracted delicately, ensuring no additional harm to the horse. The team's hands were steady, their focus absolute. As the object was finally freed, a collective sigh of relief was breathed. The first critical step towards the horse's recovery had been achieved. Once removed, the foreign object was handed over for examination. The surgical team looked on with curiosity as it was inspected. It was an enigma, its presence in the horse's abdomen a mystery yet to be unraveled. Questions hung in the air. How had it ended up there, and what was its origin? For now, these questions remained unanswered, the object a puzzling piece in an unfolding story. With the surgery completed, the horse was gently moved to the recovery area. The veterinary team worked to ensure its comfort, monitoring vital signs and providing post-operative care. Francis and Theo, relieved yet still anxious, watched over the horse. The initial danger had passed, but the road to recovery would be long. Hope flickered in the room, a quiet optimism that the worst was over and healing could begin. In the aftermath of the surgery, Francis's sense of responsibility intensified. He couldn't shake off the need to understand what had happened to the horse. With a new resolve, he embarked on a personal mission to uncover the truth. His dedication to the wild horses was more than a job, it was a calling. Determined to protect these majestic creatures, Francis knew that solving this mystery was crucial. Francis began his investigation by collecting information about the horse's habitat and recent activities in the area. He meticulously reviewed reports, mapped the horse's known movements, and noted any unusual occurrences. Each piece of information was a potential clue, a part of the larger puzzle. His efforts were thorough, leaving no stone unturned. The area's tranquil beauty belied the complexity of the task at hand. Poring over the data, Francis began formulating hypotheses about the foreign object's origin. Could it have been an accidental encounter, or was there a more sinister explanation? He considered various scenarios, from environmental contamination to human interference. Each hypothesis brought new questions, driving Francis to dig deeper. The mystery was like a knot, each thread interwoven, waiting to be unraveled. Realizing the need for more expertise, Francis reached out to local wildlife experts and enthusiasts. He organized meetings, shared his findings, and listened to their insights. Their discussions were animated, filled with theories and speculations. The local knowledge proved invaluable, offering perspectives Francis hadn't considered. The community's connection to the land and its creatures enriched the investigation, bringing new layers of understanding. As the complexity of the situation became apparent, Francis decided to involve the police. The mysterious circumstances surrounding the foreign object suggested that this was more than just a wildlife issue. With a heavy heart, he made the call, explaining the situation and his concerns. The involvement of law enforcement marked a new phase in the investigation, expanding its scope beyond the natural world into the realm of human actions. Taking a decisive step, Francis dialed the local police department, his voice steady as he reported the strange discovery. He detailed the events leading up to the horse's surgery, emphasizing the unusual nature of the foreign object found. His call was met with immediate attention, the seriousness of the situation clear. The police recognized the need for their involvement, marking the beginning of a new chapter in this unfolding mystery. Shortly after Francis's call, a squad car rolled up to the scene. 2 officers stepped out, their expressions a mix of curiosity and professionalism. Francis greeted them, quickly bringing them up to speed. The officers listened intently, taking notes as Francis recounted the events. Their presence signified the escalation of the case from a veterinary mystery to a potential criminal investigation, broadening the scope of the inquiry. With the formalities completed, the police officially launched their investigation. They started by examining the site where the horse was found, looking for any clues or anomalies. Francis assisted, providing insight into the area's geography and wildlife. The officers were methodical in their approach, understanding that even the smallest detail could be a vital piece of the puzzle. The seriousness of their task was evident in their focused demeanors. The police began a thorough sweep of the area, collecting any potential evidence. They interviewed locals who frequented the area, gathering accounts of recent activities and sightings. Francis watched as the officers methodically worked, their questions precise and purposeful. Each interview was a chance to uncover a lead, a hope to shed light on the mysterious circumstances surrounding the horse's condition. As the investigation progressed, the police started to form a preliminary theory regarding the object's presence. Their discussions with Francis and the locals, combined with the evidence collected, led to speculative conclusions. The nature of the object suggested human involvement, but its purpose and origin remained elusive. The officers knew they were only scratching the surface, but each new piece of information brought them closer to understanding the truth. Francis led the police officers back to the exact spot where the horse had been found. They carefully examined the area, looking for any signs that might have been missed initially. Francis pointed out the horse's tracks and the path it likely took. The officers took detailed notes and photos, documenting everything. This thorough re-examination was crucial, retracing the steps that led to the horse's discovery and its subsequent ordeal. The police and Francis conducted interviews with residents who lived near the area where the horse was found. Each conversation provided new insights. Locals shared observations about recent changes and unusual occurrences in the surroundings. These community members, familiar with the rhythms of the land, offered valuable perspectives that had previously gone unnoticed. Their contributions added essential pieces to the increasingly complex puzzle. With each interview and piece of gathered evidence, the puzzle began to take shape. The police officers, alongside Francis, started connecting dots, forming a clearer picture of the events. Patterns emerged and inconsistencies were noted and explored. The collected information was like a tapestry, each thread interwoven with the next, gradually revealing a larger story that encompassed both the natural and human elements of the case. A breakthrough came when one local mentioned seeing unusual activity in the area a few days before the horse was found. This eyewitness account described unfamiliar vehicles and people near the location, arousing suspicion. The police officers took a keen interest in this lead, recognizing its potential significance. This new information opened a pathway to understanding the mysterious circumstances, shedding light on a potential human element in the case. Armed with the new information, the police began focusing on identifying potential suspects. They cross-referenced vehicle descriptions and times with other reports and sightings. Every piece of information was scrutinized and every lead was pursued. Francis watched as the police methodically narrowed down their list, zeroing in on those who might have a connection to the unusual activity observed. The investigation was gaining momentum, drawing closer to uncovering the truth. A local farmer approached the police, hesitant yet determined. He recounted seeing strange activities on the night in question, vehicles in unusual places, people acting covertly. His account was the breakthrough the police needed, providing tangible leads to pursue. His detailed description of the vehicles and people involved was a turning point in the investigation. Francis listened, realizing the significance of this testimony in solving the mystery surrounding the horse. With the witnesses' information, the police uncovered a smuggling operation in the area. The foreign object found inside the horse was linked to this illegal activity. It was a shocking revelation that an innocent animal had become an unintended victim of human crimes. The officers pieced together the evidence, revealing a network of illicit activities that had previously gone unnoticed in the quiet rural area. Upon further investigation, it became clear that the horse had accidentally ingested the foreign object. The police theorized that the object was dropped or hidden in the area, and the horse, grazing nearby, had unknowingly consumed it. This accidental ingestion led to the horse's distress and the subsequent medical emergency. Francis felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief that the mystery was unraveling, and anger at the careless actions that had endangered the horse. Using the detailed descriptions provided by the key witness, along with additional evidence, the police were able to identify suspects in the smuggling operation. They cross-referenced vehicle registrations, checked surveillance footage, and conducted background checks. Each piece of evidence brought them closer to the culprits. Francis watched as the police meticulously connected the dots, bringing the perpetrators of the operation into the light. The police, now armed with substantial evidence and suspect identities, prepared to apprehend those responsible for the smuggling operation. Plans were laid out for coordinated raids and arrests. Francis, though not directly involved in the law enforcement actions, felt a deep sense of satisfaction that justice was being served. The culprit's apprehension would not only solve the case, but also protect other animals and the community from similar dangers. In a swift operation, the police apprehended the suspects involved in the smuggling ring. One by one, the culprits were taken into custody and their illegal activities were halted. The arrests were a culmination of meticulous investigation and cooperation. Francis watched from a distance, a sense of justice filling his heart. The successful operation marked not just the end of the case, but a victory for the law and the protection of wildlife. The story of the wild horse and the smuggling operation quickly caught the attention of the media. Local news outlets and beyond began reporting on the incident, highlighting the impact of illegal activities on wildlife. The story sparked a broader conversation about the importance of protecting natural habitats and the creatures that inhabit them. Francis found himself at the center of this story. His role was crucial in the unfolding events. The incident brought the local community together in a show of solidarity for wildlife protection. People from all walks of life rallied, pledging to be more vigilant and involved in conservation efforts. Community meetings were held and plans were made to safeguard the local environment. Francis felt a renewed sense of community spirit and dedication, a silver lining in the aftermath of the troubling events. In the wake of the case's resolution, Francis was recognized as a local hero. His dedication and tireless efforts were celebrated by the community and his peers. Local organizations and residents expressed their gratitude, some even organizing a small ceremony in his honor. Francis, humbled by the recognition, knew that his true reward was the safety and well-being of the wild horses he so dearly protected. Finally, the day came when the horse, fully recovered, was released back into the wild. Francis watched with a mix of pride and emotion as the horse galloped away into the open fields. The area where the horse was found had since received increased protection and surveillance, ensuring the safety of the wildlife there. This incident marked a new beginning, a renewed commitment to preserving the natural beauty and inhabitants of the region.